Yo, what up folks, TG here. In the MTG Arena State of the Game, Wizards made two big announcements, economy stuff, and a couple other gameplay changes, but two new sets coming out. The first one is coming out in December, so pretty really quick. Explorer Anthology 2, and this video will be a wish list of cards I've put together for that. And then the other thing is Shadows over Innistrad Remastered, which is coming out early 2023 from what we've been told. And so, in the because Shadows of Innistrad Remastered is coming out very soon after, the assumption is that there aren't going to be a ton of Shadows cards or Eldritch Moon cards in Explorer Anthology 2. And so I'm going to kind of leave those out. I'm not going to bring up like Emrakul the Promised Land, Spell Queller, Thing of the Ice. There's a ton of things really, really cool, which I think we're probably going to have to wait a little bit longer for. I've put together a list of about 20 cards. We'll talk about them, and yeah. So the first thing is Brave the Elements. A little innocuous. This is a card that was totally off the radar for a long time. When it was in Standard most recently in M14, it didn't do a ton. There are a couple of decks playing like Naya Brave with a bunch of like multicolored creatures. That was a little bit of play, but not a ton. But it's come into its own in Pioneer, and it's been an absolute staple of the mono-white humans deck there. And so Brave the Elements, the first card on the list. As Pioneer and Explorer kind of get close together and kind of sync up, this is kind of the list. This is one of the white cards on my list to be reprinted. Maybe a good one to have for the format, I think. Next up in white, Chain to the Rocks. Enigmatic Incarnation fans rejoice. Enchantment you control. ETB exile creature. It's a really, really efficient removal spell, but then also synergizes really well with cards. Again, like in Enigmatic Incarnation, the like mono white Yorion deck also plays it. But yeah, super efficient removal spell, and then within Enigmatic Incarnation, obviously you're sacrificing enchantments to go find creatures. Cards really, really strong there. And yeah, the red white Yorion deck as well. Let's carry on going. Eldrazi Displacer, one of my favorite cards. And kind of the first of the Eldrazi we'll talk about. Eldrazi Displacer is why the rest, well, I guess they're all colorless technically. I could have put this somewhere else, but hey, there are more Eldrazi coming up afterwards. Exile creature, returns to the battlefield under Eldrazi's control. I personally play this card a ton in company decks. In Bant, kind of splashy with some Eldrazi stuff. There's a few other purposes. Pretty strong, pretty strong. Yeah, flicker effect, pretty powerful. On my list for sure. Okay, Elspeth Sun's Champion. 6 mana, which is a lot. Super, super powerful. Planeswalker at the end game quite quickly. +1, +1, +1, -7, fly over for 27 or whatever like that. But hey, yeah, it has the facility of having the Wrath ability. Destroys all creatures powerful or greater. The staple of things like Abzan mid-range. Obviously, has been played in blue-white some amount. But yeah, really big Planeswalker just takes over the game and also has that board wipe attached onto it. Kythian. Again, for the human deck. And this is also as well, since in synergizes well with some of the recent additions from Brothers War. And I guess this is also kind of like all the Origins Planeswalkers. Kythian, Kythian, Jace, Chandra, Liliana, Nissa. Would be really good to have them on. Not all of them are playable in Pioneer / Explorer. But hey, Kythian and Jace, both pretty decent, and I think Nissa maybe has a home. Liliana you can maybe do some stuff with, but here we are. Soldier of the Pantheon. This is actually just like a tour of mono white humans. It's another elite vanguard. It has pro multicolored, which is actually relevant in some matchups. I'm just going to close this. This is fine. We need to talk about this. Okay, so the big things on the list in blue are the Delve spells. We've got Dig Through Time, and in a moment we'll get to Treasure Cruise. These are super important. These are like the main difference, I feel like, between the Pioneer experience and the Explorer experience. Is that the blue-red decks get access to the Delve spells. And hey, blue-black's probably actually the best home for Dig Through Time, or some kind of combo deck. And it's not seen as much play in Pioneer as people expected. Obviously, we don't have all the fetch lands. You need to be doing pretty specific stuff to enable it, and a lot of the time Cruise fits into more decks. But Dig Through Time's still really, really powerful. And then, we'll get to Treasure Cruise. Hidden Strings. Alright. Hidden Strings for the Lotus Field decks. This is a major thing they're missing. We also don't have pour over pages, which is in Shadows of Innistrad, but obviously I said I wouldn't talk about Innistrad cards because Shadows Remastered is coming out soon. Yeah. Lets you make a bunch of mana with Lotus Field. Enough said, really. Important piece missing. Temporal Trespass. This is in alphabetical order, which is why we're still waiting on Treasure Cruise, I'm sorry. But yeah. Sees play in Phoenix, obviously. It's interesting one to have around in the format. I'm also curious if there's like a fun like taking turns deck. But yeah, thought I'd mention it. And then of course Treasure Cruise. Ancestral Recall. Yeah, Delve, draw 3. The main home for this is of course blue-reds. The main thing that's missing from decks like Phoenix, like blue-red aggro, all that kind of stuff. They get a massive boost with this. And so one of the interesting things to talk about when it comes to bringing new cards into the format is keeping the balance there across the board. Because like the blue-red decks in the format are fine. I posted a Balmore aggro deck video over the weekend, and hey, that deck's great. And like blue-red's still fine. People still try and play Phoenix. You're just missing these powerhouse cards that make the decks very, very good. And so keeping the balance across the format when you're adding things to not push too hard in one direction. In black, we've got Bloodsoaked Champion here. Really, really important for mono black aggro, but also, and I said I wasn't going to mention Shadows cards, but works really, really nicely with Prized Amalgam when we eventually get that. I kind of hope they might add a couple of Shadows cards in Explorer Anthology too, but I'm kind of not holding my breath. Yeah, Bloodsoaked Champion, mono black aggro, and then eventually kind of like Dredge type things once we get Prized Amalgam. Okay. Eidolon of the Great Revel. Everyone loves red. The most popular red deck at the moment, I think, in Explorer is the Obosh version, playing odd spells, which doesn't play, but Eidolon probably pushes that a little bit the other way. But I think both versions of the deck are fine in Pioneer. But obviously Eidolon's super powerful. Always chucks your opponent for a bit of damage. But hey, yeah, it's just great. I don't know what to say. Yep. Oh, okay. This is me being selfish one. Gear Up at Aether Grid is a card I really like to have in the format. Just enable some like control-esque like artifact strategies. Not to the level of like Lantern Control, but you used to, well, okay, Gear Up at Aether Grid has only really seen play in Lantern Control before. We have a good number of artifacts and things where you could play like an artifact-based control deck when you're like tutoring for different bullets and things. I think Gear Up at Aether Grid would be a sweet card to have in the format. Also provides some alternate win conditions for like blue-red artifacts. I've played a bit with the Aetherflux Reservoir combo deck. And yeah, there you go. Rose, everyone's favorite answer to Sheoldred. Yep, just like a solid red removal spell, it's missing. It doesn't hit everything. It's actually, I think, a really cool design of a card. But hey, yeah, it's really efficient, but only against the things that it's efficient, like good against. Oh, that's a non-sentence, but hey. All right, Oath of Nissa. This is another favorite of mine, but was banned in Pioneer for some time. Look at the top 2 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature, land, or planeswalker card from among them, put them into your hand, put the rest at the bottom of your library in any order. Yeah. Missing. Lets you, like, splash planeswalkers for quote-unquote free. Lets you kind of, like, dig for lands, creatures. Like, hey. And also is a prime way to get enchantments to the graveyard to trigger Delirium. Which may come up and be more relevant soon. Satan Wayfinder. Not that I want to necessarily chuck a bunch of buffs towards like Greasefang. One of the cards that Abzan Greasefang is missing from the Pioneer deck in Explorer. But it also does things in like other decks which are more interesting. Again, Dredge I mentioned before. Eventually when we get Prized Amalgam, yada yada yada. Card's just really, really sweet. Sylvan Carroted, another mana guy. I guess, oh actually, we'll get onto it later in this list, but yeah. Another mana creature, a very durable mana creature, and yeah, a missing piece. It goes well in one of the decks that with one of the cards I'll mention in a little bit. Dreadball. We have Bedevil. We don't have Dreadball. It's just efficient removal for creatures and planeswalkers. Missing from it, please, WotC, please. Again, Red Black's also already an established deck that's already pretty good, but like it's a small buff, right? At the end of the day, so hey. Jeskai Ascendancy. This is what we want the Sylvan Carriers for, really. But hey, I'm really asking for this to play unfair Jeskai Ascendancy combo decks. And mess around with that. I was a bigger fan of playing the deck in Standard. I played it a little bit in Modern as well, when it was quote unquote like enemy. Well, when with like Get Probe when it was anyway. Jeskai Ascendancy, cast on creature spell, creature control get +1/+1, untap them. Really good. Lets you kind of, if you've got spells to cast, you kind of go off with mana creatures. Ergo, while I was talking about Sylvan Carroted. And then yeah, when you cast on creature spell, you may draw and discard. Pretty good. Pretty good. Oh. Another favourite of mine, Shaman of the Pack. Elf deck in Explorer is good at the moment. It's a little, it's like a piece off. It's a couple of pieces of being tier 1, or like a little bit away. It's like a solid tier 2 deck. I think Shaman of the Pack takes it over the top into being tier 1, or at least tier like 1.5. Deck's really good. Shaman of the Pack gives you an alternate win condition, and means you're not necessarily relying on like War Master activations or some other non-elf win condition that you're having to play. Yeah, would like that. Did I mention Quarter Calling? I left Quarter Calling off my list? Okay, well, I will, insert Quarter Calling. Was it M15 most recently? Card's great, lets you tutor for common pieces and creature combo decks. I'd kind of like it for elves, but there are also versions of the deck that don't play it. But it's just be a really nice card to just like have in the format. One of the things I think about is how fast Wizards are trying to turn the corner of getting Explorer close to Pioneer. We'll see how many cards they add in Anthology. It might only be 20. So I've kept this list to about, I think there's probably like 20, 25 cards on the list that I'm presenting here. Alright, moving on. We've got the Chain Veil. Mono green. We'll also see about, well, we'll see what happens with Mono green. The Pioneer Regionals are this weekend in Sofia and Atlanta. And the deck's doing fine. Like the format seems fine. People complain a lot about the green deck. It's gotten a bunch of tools for Khan with the Stone Brain. And so hey, that's the main home that the Chain Veil's had before. We'll see if it stays there or not. If we get it or not. And then some Eldrazi. Thought-Knot-Seer. Good old Thought-Knot-Seer. Yeah. Disruptive. Lets you play like, well, the night. So we finally got the full cycle of Painlands in Explorer. Painlands let you obviously are the best way to kind of like splash for these devoid, like the colorless mana devoid. Yeah, these creatures in like colored decks. And Thought-Knot-Seer is probably the chief among them, I would say. I like this placer a lot. I think like you could play Matter Reshaper, which I think we'll get to. I actually thought that was just queued up before this. Matter Reshaper, Thought-Knot-Seer, and Reality Smasher could have a home. Whether you're ramping into them, obviously don't have access in Pioneer or Explorer to either like Eldrazi Temple or Ryvigan. Be a little too powerful, I think. But a fair not Thought-Knot-Seer, it'll still be fine. It's still not exactly found its perfect home in Pioneer yet, but hey. And then, yeah, the other things on that list, Matter Reshaper and Reality Smasher. Shaper, when it dies, reveals up card of your library. That card into the battlefield, it was permanent. If it costs 3 or less, otherwise put it into your hand. And then Reality Smasher, just a big, trample, haste creature with, when it comes to target spell ability controls, that controller has to discard a card or counter it. And that's similar to the original Graveyard Trespasser, if you will. Alright, lands. Lands are an interesting one. So Mutavault, again, the mono-white human wish list, is the pseudo title of the video, I guess. But then there are other places for Mutavault as well, bear in mind. But Mutavault, one of the main things, just like a really, really efficient mana land. Then we have Nykthos, a bit of a controversial one, I guess. People calling for this card to be banned. Would be awkward for Wizards after they had it as a promo for Regional Championship Series. Well, for Regional Championship qualifiers. But hey, card's really powerful. Obviously, main home is mono green, but we see Nykthos decks doing other things. In particular, the white deck with what's the white X spell from Brothers War called? Oh, I can't remember. But the Angels decks are starting to play Nykthos as well, like a couple of copies to kind of like get a bunch of mana for that. There's a few other decks that want to do your Nykthos things. Card's great. Yeah. And then lastly, Urborg. Good old Urborg. Make all the land swamps. Enough said, really. Yeah, so that's my wish list. I may have missed a bunch of things. Obviously, I didn't really talk about the Shadows and Eldritch Moon cards very much. Eldritch Evolution, I didn't mention before, but also another like, huge one, which is also seen playing Abzan. Greasefang now, because you can go from 1 to 3 with the Greasefang and like stack a Stitch supplier and all sorts. If you think I missed anything, let me know in the comments. Other than that, please sub to the channel, like and subscribe, all that stuff. Have a great day. Peace out.